This is the apocalypse. Now what will you do? What's your next move? How will you change? What will you do to shift this paradigm? Peep this. Peace, people. It's me, Arlene J. Ramsey, CEO and founder of Everyone Let's Talk. Also your favorite self-wealth mentor. How are you guys doing this evening? Happy holidays, by the way. Are you guys ready? Finished your Christmas shopping? Did your grocery shopping? Ready to give love, receive love, exchange gifts? Have family and friends over? Good, because we are over here as well. But with this segment, of course, I'm not going to be talking about the holidays. I want to get into the energy that we've been seeing. First off, I want to give my condolences to both the New York police officers that were recently murdered. It's definitely an unfortunate situation here, and I wanted to lend my thoughts on this entire situation. It stems beyond Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Eric Garner. It stems beyond Rodney King, who were beaten by those officers over there in on the West Coast, but the officers were not indicted or arrested. I did recall having a recording about this sort of thing a couple of months ago, and I mentioned that our people, we're going to continue to be casualties, or we're going to start to become casualties of war. Now, this is no such thing as putting mouth or putting anything in the universe. This is universal law. This is the law of cause and effect and the law of karma, regardless of if it's said or not. That's just how it's going to go. So what we've seen here is someone who was obviously having issues or some challenges in his life, and before he took his own, he decided to start the war. And I don't want to say start the war. He decided to initiate the fight back in what we have been seeing, because before it wasn't a war. It was an assassination. Not an assassination. It was clear assassinations and clear attacks on our people for centuries, right? And how many of us, fought back besides those who were part of the Black Panthers and besides the activists? And there's only a handful of those. And we've seen what happened to many of our activists. Many of them were arrested, thrown behind bars. Some of them are still there. Some of them had to flee. There's only but so much of them. So what happens when we have no one to stand up for us or fight for us as a people, as a race, as a whole? Now, of course, I can get into the thing of, we need to learn how not to break the law. That's one thing, and I talk about that all the time. But I want to stick with the fact that police officers have been doing too much and have been getting away with too much. And I understand that there are far more good officers than there are bad officers. I understand that very clear. But I also understand that those of you who are the good officers need at some point to stand up and say something against those who are taking advantage of their position and situations. And for the good officers who do speak up, because I've been reading for years, there's been cases off and on where there are officers who stand up against the good old blue and the good old badge, and they become attacked by the majority of the police force. They become ostracized, attacked. Some of them have lost their jobs. Just a couple of years ago, I read we're right here in New Jersey, where you had in Newark, by the way, where there were officers who were fighting against the system who ended up suing for a couple of $1 million, and they actually won. The officer was married. His wife got a couple of $100,000, and he got, I think, nearly $2 million. So it panned out for them for having been fired or let go from their job to actually sue and win this case. But what I'm saying is that there are far more of you who are indifferent, who sit back and don't take up for those who are fighting against the system, and you say you have nothing to do with it. You want to stay out of it. Well, here's what happens when you stay out of it. When you stay out of it and you remain indifferent, you allow injustice to erode. You allow exactly what we've been seeing and witnessing to continue to happen, continue to take place. You allow the good old blue and the good old badge to continue to have a negative stigma or a negative rub on the people of this nation. There's so much that you allow. And I get it. Some of you are thinking like, well, how can I allow it? I have absolutely nothing to do with it. This is not my life. There's so much that's going to go on with you on why you can combat what I'm saying. But here's what you need to understand, right? You have to understand that this is a spiritual warfare, and you have to understand that there is higher spirits. Right? We can call it God. We can call it the Creator. We can call it the Master. We can call it Allah. We can call it whatever we want to call it. I don't want to get into the name, but you understand that the spirit of light, the spirit of good, the spirit of all that great stuff, the Creator, goes by those names that many of us know. And then you have the spirit of the devil, right? You have both spirits that are constantly warring, constantly combating. All right, they're spirits. They are not people. They are spirits, right? We, in physical form, are representatives of either spirit. Therefore, when you're connected, whichever spirit you're connected to, when there is too much, you have to initiate the uprising. You have to initiate the revolution. You have to stand up and let your voice be heard. Stand up and let your voice be heard. And when your partner is standing up and letting their voice be heard, and you see your partner being attacked, you stand up and you back your partner. Because again, that's the spiritual warfare. But when you don't, your partner doesn't have that much energy to combat that system, do their job, then go home and deal with family life. It's just very draining. It's very draining. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't get into the Bible, but I'm quite sure you guys heard of the skit where when God wanted to start His wrath or its wrath, God chose to start the wrath with the individual or the being who was indifferent, the being who sat back and watched everything happen but chose not to say anything. God started with punishing that being, simply because that's the one who knows better. That's the one that's seeing everything with a clear head. That's the one that if they would have said something, their voice could have made all the difference. But that's the one that remained indifferent and said, I have nothing to do with it. And they allow the anarchy to continue to go on. So because of that, that's the one that He has to start with first. Now I know this might sound crazy to you, but whenever you see high and great levels of anarchy and you can't seem to get it under control, the only way you can get that under control is by starting anarchy. Doesn't make sense, does it? So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. There's just people on this side and they're both going at it, and there's so much noise, there's so much ruckus between both. Sometimes in order to calm both of these that's going back and forth at it, you have to start anarchy, powerful, with a blow out of nowhere to shock both so they can be quiet and pay attention to what's going on. That's how it always has been, and that's how it's going to continue to be. This here is a spiritual warfare. Now, I'm quite sure you're probably scratching your head like, Arlene, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing this up? Easy, simple. Here it is. This is why I'm bringing it up. That brother that killed those 2 police officers was All right, people, we got cut off, but right before I got cut off, I was as I was saying, that brother who killed both those officers before taking his life was that soul who was ordained by the greatest spirit to create that anarchy, to get people, those from both sides, to quiet down and pay attention. As I've mentioned before, this is universal law. Okay, this is not the thing of, that's good for the officers or that's what you get. No, it's not that. This is universal law, and it pans out to be that when there's too much corruption going on, this type of anarchy, this type of uprising is what we will see. I mean, you guys read about it with Sodom and Gomorrah. Have you ever saw this movie, Legion? Have you ever saw this movie? If you haven't, I suggest you watch it. I'm going to read this here. Under Legion, it says, heaven will unleash hell on earth. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. When our Creator have had enough, there will be an uprising. And now let me just let you guys understand something. There are more generals, gangbangers, gang members, Crip blood, whatever you want to call it, who are ready to die. Who are ready to die. And it's been brewing. A lot of them will go out just like that. They will go out being casualties of war and no longer a casualty. Because this is the life they're living. Just think about it. The life they're living, 85% of them understand that they don't have long to live. And before they go out, they don't get any warnings. So let's just think about it. What do you think it'll take for all of them to organize and say, we're not taking this. We're going to bang out against those officers. No more of officers killing our brothers like that. We're going in. What do you think it's going to take for them to actually take that on? And trust me, this is not me telling them to do it. No, but don't think that they have not been thinking about it. So here's the more important thing that I need you to pay attention to. As I've mentioned in the first recording, you officers, those of you who are indifferent, you need to step up. Wives, women, those of you who are married to officers, you have a duty to make sure you speak balance into your man. Speak balance to your man. You know what type of man you're married to. Some of you pretend that you don't. But as I always, bullying is something that I talk about frequent. Because it's in plenty of people have that. It's in their character. It's a part of who they are as a person. And if you are a bully as a person and you're a police officer, guess what? You will be bullying people on the street. If you're a bully at home, if that's a part of your character and you're a correction officer, guess what you will do? You will mistreat those inmates in the jail. That's what it's going to be. So those of you who have family members that are like that, you have a duty to make sure you speak to these people and make sure you speak life into them. Yes, you have this job, but you do not have the job of taking advantage of your position and your badge. All right? Your job is to apprehend those who are doing wrong, to serve and to protect. That is your job. For those of you who are police officers, all right? Don't take things too far when it comes to apprehending someone who have broken the law. It should never get to the point where you are using abusive force unless that person is actually fighting you back. Then it is warranted. Same thing for you correction officers. All right? It is not your job to judge the inmates that are there. It is your job. You're a correction officer. So it is your job to correct the facility and make sure you keep peace behind those walls. All right? But until that doesn't happen, and if you continue to be the people that you are, we're going to see more of an uprising, and it is not going to be pretty for you guys. It will not. Trust me, this is something that I don't want to see, and that many of us don't want to see. I have plenty of friends that are police officers and plenty who are correction officers. Alright, so it's something I don't want to see, and I don't want to see a friend of mine going down for something that someone else has done. That's another thing that's important. Alright, these two officers who were killed, I don't know their background, but chances are the officers, the bad cops, what are the odds of them being the ones that are being taken out? What are the odds? It's hard to find them. So whenever people are, whenever revenge or an uprising or a revolution is taking place, it's going to start with people that sometimes has nothing to do with what's going on, as I've mentioned before. It starts with and that's the sad thing. But the lesson is, let your character speak for who you are. Because when you're truly a good cop, a good correction officer, a good person, people talk about it. People know. People know. Make sure you step up. Make sure you always have something to say when you see injustice. Step up. Speak up. Have your partner's back who is speaking up. Because if not, we'll see this circle come back to you. And when it comes back to you, do you think you'll have the heart, the guts, the galls to handle it? Will you? Peace, people.